It is Friday, December 18th. Let's talk PlayStation. Well, what started off as a relatively slow and expected news week for what is the second half of December, it got a lot more interesting just recently, so we'll be talking about all that good stuff. But first, as always, our PlayStation Plus reminder, the Instant Game Collection games that are currently available right now, that's Just Cause 4, Worms Rumble, and Rocket Arena. You still have a lot of time to download these or add them to your library. Before we get to those exciting news stories, real quick, let's just go over some smaller updates here, like Spider-Man Remastered. It did in fact get that update for a 60 FPS performance mode like we talked about last week for Spider-Man Miles Morales. It actually came fairly quickly, just a few days after that update for Miles Morales, so great that that's now here. So if you were planning on playing this game on PS5, that is ideally the mode that you're probably going to want to start playing the game on. It's the best of both worlds. We also got that update for Sackboy Big Adventure. Remember, this update was delayed for the game where it wasn't going to have online co-op immediately. It also wasn't going to have save file transfers from PS4 to PS5, so that is now here. They said they were going to do that before the end of the year, and so they just made it. So that update is now available for Sackboy Big Adventure. You can move over your save file from PS4 to PS5, and you can now play online with friends. Couch co-op was always there from day one, but now online play is available. Next up, we have some PlayStation 5 sales data to go over. We were unfortunately not able to directly acknowledge this on last week's episode because it came out as I was editing last week's episode, but unsurprisingly, we do have more confirmation that PS5 is doing very well. An indirect sort of announcement here, but PS5 had the best launch month in US history, beating PS4, which was the previous record holder in 2013, so we kind of already knew that. What is somewhat noteworthy here is that Nintendo Switch still technically outsold it in terms of total units, because Switch is a matured platform at this point, so Nintendo had a lot more supply versus, say, Sony. If they made more PS5s, I'm sure they would have completely outsold Switch in this manner, although it is also important to understand that in terms of dollar sales, PS5 completely topped out the month because it's more expensive versus a Switch. Either way, though, obviously Sony's still doing very well. We also learned that in France, in terms of what seems like a rough estimate of console sales, PlayStation 5 sold 107,000 units compared to Xbox Series X and S selling 37,000 units. Remember, this isn't really indicative of anything other than that's the supply that was allocated to France. So obviously they didn't get a whole lot here, but it seems like that was more than what we saw in 2013, and that's what we keep hearing over and over again, is that technically this time around there is more supply to go around versus what we saw in 2013. So while it's still very difficult to get a console, there are technically more opportunities versus the last generation, although it really doesn't feel like it, of course. And while we're on this topic, good segue to our next news story, which is a Walmart corporate blog post about how the company is doing their best with preventative measures to make sure that most of the console sales between PS5 and Series S and X actually do go to genuine customers and not bots. So the blog post actually says, and I quote here, "One bot preventative action we implemented just hours before the PlayStation 5 event on November 25th blocked more than 20 million bot attempts within the first 30 minutes alone, which is a fraction of what our systems deal with continually. As an additional step, we also audit and quickly cancel any orders confirmed to be purchased by bots that may have slipped through. As a result, the vast majority of our next-gen consoles have been purchased by legitimate customers, which is exactly what we want." Now, I'd actually like to combine this with another news story that we had. It was an analysis from a data engineer that was very thorough about the eBay scalping market since the beginning of September or towards the end of it, but it was basically an analysis of the scalping market between PS5, Series S and X, AMD, and NVIDIA products, and basically amongst all these things, what we're seeing on the marketplace is $82 million in sales, or about $39 million in profit for scalpers, and for PS5, Series S and X, about 60,000 consoles were resold, 32,000 of those being PS5s between the digital edition and the disc-based model, and that obviously this is, well, very lucrative. But 60,000 as a number, it's kind of what I said. I don't know if I said this last week or the week before, but and this goes with the Walmart situation. It definitely feels like you're fighting against a lot of bots, and that's certainly the case. And 60,000 is not a small number by any stretch. But when we're talking about millions of consoles that are being sold, and this is between Microsoft and Sony, it still seems as though the vast majority of these consoles are getting sold to people that are buying these things for personal use, for giving them out as gifts, or what have you, right? I mean, if that softens the blow a little bit, I know it's not great to hear, obviously, because it's annoying to see these things up on eBay right now where you technically could have a PS5 in 2-day shipping, or probably longer than that because of shipping delays. But I mean, to know that you could buy a PS5 if you're just willing to pony up, let's say $1,200 to $1,300, it does suck. But at the very least, a lot of these consoles are actually going to customers that just want to buy it and play it for personal use, just like yourself. And at least one other encouraging news story that we do have to share here is that in the UK at least, members of British Parliament are pushing legislation to hopefully make this illegal in some way, shape, or form about using bots to resell these products, or certainly trying to flip them for well over the suggested retail price from the manufacturer. Not really sure if this will, how they'll combat this, or what the actual proposals will end up being, but it seems like there's some meaningful push in the United Kingdom to make this enforceable by some way, and that's really the only way that I think would have any sort of meaningful result, right? That's what we were saying before. It's just people are always going to exploit society for financial gain. You can't really stop individual people from doing it outside of possibly enforcing it on a larger scale, and this would be probably one way to do it. You know, that's one step in the right direction, and hopefully it wouldn't be a major issue moving forward. Okay, now let's talk about the Cyberpunk 2077 situation, because it really is amazing what has played out within the last week, and now it's gotten to a point where Sony has intervened and gotten involved. So here's a breakdown of every single event just to get you brought up to speed. So December 10th, the game comes out, right? And there were reviews prior to that, but the current gen consoles are in rough shape. There's bugs everywhere, there's poor performance, crashing. Everyone is sharing their horror stories on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, wherever, and obviously the review copies that were sent out were for the PC version where it looks the best. December 14th, CD Projekt Red puts out a statement that they should have paid more attention to the PS4 and Xbox One versions. They promised 2 large patches coming, one in January, another in February, to fix most of the issues. And in this statement, they asked to be given a second chance, but in the event that users do want a refund, they urge them to just use the refund systems on PSN or Xbox for digital copies. If the game was bought physically, then they say try the store that you bought it from, and if that doesn't work out, you can try emailing them directly so that they can try to help you. And at this point, people start sharing their experiences of trying to refund the game. And this is where a big problem starts to happen, because despite the developer's statement, people are getting refund requests denied left and right. This is across Xbox and PSN, but this is certainly more an issue for PSN users, where the refund policy is more restrictive. The following day, the 15th, on a conference call, CD Projekt Red confirms that they've actually not set up anything special with Microsoft or Sony for refunds. There's no particular exception for Cyberpunk. They've also confirmed they're committed to fixing the game and making it playable. Basically, they state they're more focused on the PC and next-gen versions, or at least they were, and that in terms of the certification process and how they got through, they're guessing that they were trusted with fixing all these issues by launch with that day one patch, which of course didn't happen, and we've had another patch after the fact, and that still didn't really fix everything. They then reiterate the current gen versions are aimed to be playable, stable, without any glitches or crashes. You won't get crazy visual enhancements, but they are aiming to have the games playable from start to finish with no major issues. Then yesterday, the 17th, Sony put out a special webpage for Cyberpunk 2077 refunds where you can submit a request if you own a digital copy. They also delisted the game from the PlayStation Store until further notice. CD Projekt Red put out a statement saying that this decision was from a conversation with SIE directly regarding the refund, and that if you do intend to keep your copy of the game, if you don't want that refund from a digital version, your copy will still receive patches and things like that. You can delete it and then pull it back from the store if you want to. It's not completely gone, just you can't buy the game brand new digitally. So that's where we're at right now as recording this video, and this is insane. We've never seen anything like this, or at least at this scale, right? I mean, games get removed from online storefronts all the time for being broken or not working, and they're usually smaller titles, and we've got some other bigger games that have had terrible launch cycles that have also seen a lot of patches and fixes, but nothing to this scale of a AAA game that has seen an 8+ year development cycle, a lot of hype surrounding it, multiple delays, and then of course the current gen versions being like hidden out of view because obviously they look, you know, really washed out and the performance is quite poor. And sure, you can draw certain parallels amongst other games that we've seen previously, whether it's Fallout 76, Anthem, No Man's Sky, or Witcher 3 is obviously the one that a lot of people are referencing. And it's not even a matter of them all having certain parallels, of course, because right now Cyberpunk is in a situation where the current gen versions were really kept out of view for a very long time up until the very end. The review copies were all the PC version, so once you got the current gen version where you're playing on a base PS4 or even a PS4 Pro, Xbox One, Xbox One X, the game is, you know, running at a really low resolution, a lot of frame rate dips, the bugs, the crashes. I mean, it is in a pretty poor state. Now, I can't speak for it personally because I have not bought the game. I was waiting for the native PlayStation 5 version, honestly. A lot of people are playing on PS5, and that's where you can sort of brute force a lot of these issues out of here, where you can play at a pretty clean 60 frames per second. The resolution is still locked around 1100p or something like that, but that still doesn't stop the bugs or the crashes. You don't get true visual enhancements, obviously. You're still playing the game through backwards compatibility. It's still inherently a PS4 game. But the problem here is that this is a PS4 and Xbox One game. The current gen machines are still very important, and that's where a lot of the sales for this game went. They saw, what, 8 million pre-orders, and that kind of locks you in, because that's the problem with the story, and the PlayStation angle that we really need to talk about here is Sony's refund policy, because it's a lot more restrictive. I mean, Microsoft's is a little more open-ended. I mean, obviously people were getting denied there if they wanted to request a refund, but if you were playing the game on Xbox and you wanted to do a refund, you know, their policy outlines about a 2-week window. It's based off of play time, so you're actually allowed to start the content for a little bit, but ideally you want to stay under 2 hours to hopefully get a higher chance of getting your refund accepted, and it's self-service, so they make it a lot easier there to at least start that process and hopefully get it granted. But on PlayStation, I mean, basically the game has to, well, be this for you to get a refund, because otherwise, if you start the content, you've already ruined your chances of getting a refund. It's very restrictive. You can't start or stream the content or anything. You basically have to buy something and then never even touch it to get a refund for it, which is a little bizarre. There's got to be something more in place for this, and hopefully Cyberpunk is going to set a new precedent here, because obviously it's just crazy how this is played out, and for Sony, this is why they need to set up a customized storefront to handle all these refunds. And what's even more of a larger statement is the game is delisted from the PlayStation Store until CD Projekt Red cleans up what they've done here. And now it's a matter of what is this going to look like for the next big AAA release that, you know, is going to be under heavy scrutiny for, let's say it's an open world game, because a lot of the times it is an open world title that have a lot of bugs and issues, because, I mean, and a little bit from the developer's perspective, it's just a mountain of issues that you have to go through. Q&A, it's brutal for Q&A on a big open world AAA project like this, because there's so much that can go wrong. And you know, clearly for the team at CD Projekt Red, and for some of the people on the ground floor, right, you know, whether you're a smaller programmer, designer, Q&A, this and that, obviously Q&A, this is where they were a little more transparent and said they couldn't outsource Q&A for a lot of the stuff, because obviously COVID was a big problem, so that's where a lot of their workforce was lower for this particular project. But again, I mean, clearly they were the investors were putting a lot of pressure on them to release this game. I mean, you can argue that fans were pushing for it as well, but obviously this was a matter of higher level people allowing the game to be released in this state, and that's the unfortunate reality of it, because you have to figure that a lot of people that were working on this game, blood, sweat, and tears, knew the situation at hand, right? I mean, you can't be involved in making games and not be a gamer yourself. You knew that this game was not looking good on PS4 or X1, so it's really unfortunate that, you know, their voices weren't heard in this situation, or if they maybe had to stay silent, otherwise they would have been fired or receive disciplinary action. I mean, this is going to change things for sure. I can't see a situation where this doesn't look different for the next big budget title that comes out and goes through a certification process, because we can, you know, it was always the case for a lot of these games where that day one patch is no guarantee that it irons out everything. And obviously the larger the project is, how many delays it goes through, and some of the horror stories you hear behind the scenes, you kind of get an idea of what's going to happen. And so many people were looking forward to this game, and this has happened. It's nuts. I can't believe Sony had to do a specialized page, but that really speaks more volumes about how they handle refunds, because they were getting inundated with requests that they couldn't fulfill because their policy outlines that most refunds are going to get denied. Even though it mentions that if the game's faulty, it should, you know, they should accept it. I don't know how this game wouldn't fall under that category, so it's annoying that on the 14th people are getting denied left and right. Some people got it through. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that particular person handling your refund request might look at, or they might go through management. But wow, it's amazing what has played out. I was really quiet on the game, because I was like, all right, I'm going to turn myself off from this. I'll wait for the PS5 version. But wow, when the reviews came out and then the game came out, oof. So as of right now, we will keep watching the story and see how it plays out. And, some people have already finished the game on PS4, a base PS4, and said it was fine for them. I mean, we have to remember that there are different tolerance levels for low frame rates or different experiences with bugs or crashes, but clearly there is a major issue with this game on current-gen consoles, and certainly the insidious nature and how it was demonstrated to people and how it was released. So you can place blame wherever you want, but clearly, at least right now, Sony is making a statement by delisting it from the store, and that is a step in the right direction. I want to see what will happen moving forward. Moving on to our next news story, over on PlayStation Direct, the product page for PS4 Pro says the console's out of stock and that there are currently no plans to restock that item in the future, which if you check the PS4 Slims page, it doesn't say that whatsoever. And also if you look for a PS4 Pro online right now through Amazon, Target, Best Buy, GameStop, wherever, usually the console's out of stock or it's been out of stock for a while. And so this brings into question, is the PS4 Pro getting discontinued? And this isn't really a conversation we've had before, but PS4 Pro is in a very weird position because its MSRP has not been cut or changed to reflect PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, for example, because it's the same price in most territories. So that's really weird, of course. And PS4 Pro really hasn't seen a price cut ever. Now it has a lot of sales, and we've seen a lot of retail bundles where it'll go down to say $350, or maybe they'll pack in a bunch of games so it's still $400 but has a lot of value added to it. But for the most part, this console hasn't really moved at all. And so yeah, actually I would think that the console would be discontinued and PS4 Slim would just be the only PS4 that's available, because it is an expectation that Sony will support PS4 for the next 2-3 years until they completely cease manufacturing. That's always typical. We're fully expecting that. But PS4 Pro is a weird and unique example that we don't often see in the console business, and so I think some people would somewhat naturally think, oh, why don't you get rid of the Slim PS4, drop the price of PS4 Pro, make that the regular PS4 model moving forward. But the thing you have to remember here is that PS4 Pro has always been a low volume console. Always. About 1 in 5 PS4 sold were a PS5 Pro. It's all about that volume in production. So if they're not making a whole lot of PS4 Pros, you can't cut the price nearly as much as the wide availability of the PS4 Slim right now, where the bill of materials to make that thing is probably dirt cheap, considering that they make way more of those versus PS4 Pro. So I actually fully expect that PS4 Pro probably is discontinued. If not now, then relatively soon, because the only way that we'd know this console will get made for a little bit longer is if they do cut the price of it, because it really doesn't make sense to have that machine sit alongside the digital edition PS5. It looks dumb. So you can't get up to volume production with PS5 to where it's easily available. Go to a store, there's PS4 Pro and PS5 digital edition sitting right next to each other for $399. You can't really do that. So I would actually imagine that having PS4 Pro on the market anymore doesn't really make sense in terms of manufacturing and releasing that thing. So yeah, I actually do think this console probably is on the way out. And while it may sound somewhat weird, but as I cautioned with DualShock 4 controllers, buy that or now buy a PS4 Pro right now if you have had any interest in these things, because the value for these will shoot up. And to be honest, PS4 Pro has always held its value, which is really weird. If you didn't buy one brand new, used ones always go for around $350 to $380, maybe the low 300s, but the values hold really well for PS4 Pro. And if it is discontinued, I can guarantee you that they're going to hold strong for used consoles alone. So if you do have any interest in owning a PS4 Pro for whatever personal reasons, alongside DualShock 4s, once those are completely gone, they'll shoot up in value. So now would be the time to do it, I think. Now, with all that said, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you could win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about to you all. Our Tuesday video was 2021 games for PS5 and PS4. All the latest high-quality 4K 60 FPS trailers all in one video. Gives you a nice bird's eye view of what software you can expect with release windows. A lot of it is to be announced, but I mean that's expected, and the list will obviously change over time, but still gives you a good idea of all the games that you can expect next year. And next week actually is Christmas for Let's Talk PlayStation, so that'll be fun and festive. And that is it. We're almost done with the year, which hopefully 2021 will be a lot better, but it'll be interesting to start our coverage of the first full year of PS5 on the market. I can't wait to see how that actually plays out. But until then, that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Boetk. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.